Hello, welcome to Friday Night Lights with Rob, Tom and Ethan. This Friday we're going to do, it's a bit of a deja vu, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah.
Because about a week ago we recorded this exact podcast on promos, and the man across from me, Mr. Robert, what did you do, Rob?
I deleted it by accident.
You did, didn't you? You deleted the entire thing. So you probably heard us announce that on Friday there'd be a promo podcast coming out. That didn't happen because our kid pressed the delete button. So we're doing it again.
In true WWE style, we've just ignored what we've announced and done something else.
we made plans.
All the die-hard listeners, all the complaints.
Yeah, all the complaints come through.
I'd actually quite like some complaints. It means people care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking about promos, kind of like what makes a good promo, what promos we like, what they're used for, how they can be used, and just kind of like what they bring to not just wrestling but sports in general, really. Tom, I guess you could start because you wrote a piece for rgm.press about promos. I guess you can just fire us off.
Lovely. We talked about the promo already. We previously discussed this. The piece for RGM Press was really kind of around what wrestling brings, I suppose, to the wider sports and entertainment world. And the promo is probably one of the most pivotal things. The whole thing is designed to sell the product and get asses in seats, and the promo really does that. I mean, wrestlers literally talk people into the seats. And for me personally, I was, I suppose, drawn to wrestling more for the story side of things than the sports side of things at first. So to me, you can be not too great in the ring, but as long as your promo skills are up to mark, I'll be a big fan. A lot of my favourite wrestlers aren't necessarily the best technical performers, but man, they can just talk and talk and talk and talk. And I suppose that's really what separates a great wrestler from just another acrobat or an athlete, I suppose. If you can't handle yourself from a talking perspective, then you're not really going to go very far in the wrestling business.
No, definitely. It is probably the highest, apart from obviously being a great wrestler, it's probably the highest skill needed. I guess it kind of comes originally from the very early days of Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair. Those kind of guys who pioneered the way of, kind of promoing a match to the point where it would, as Tom said, get you to watch that. Because before the time of, short circuit TV in America and things like that, the only real way you found out about wrestling was through flyers or newspaper ads or stuff like that, which would just be kind of you'd recognise the names and the names would draw you in. Yeah. But you didn't really hear much talking on that side of things. It
stems from the carnival barker side of things. So a lot of the time, wrestling has its roots in carnivals and fairs and attractions, and you would literally have a guy with a megaphone or some kind of crude thing shouting people into the arena. This guy's going to fight this guy. Yeah. Someone's going to get killed. Someone's going to get hurt, and people are, they pay money to see that. And like you say, Dusty, Flair, and Gorgeous George, the guy responsible, directly impacted Muhammad Ali, who outside of wrestling, he's bigger than wrestling. He's Muhammad Ali.
Of course he is.
He's the most iconic sportsman of all time.
There's Billy Sharp and that. But,
but not just for Muhammad Ali's in ring either though. But for that exact reason that he could talk and he could talk people into coming to see him.
Absolutely.
That was the exciting thing about him, and he took that to the next level, didn't he? Of showmanship, as long as you're as well as the sort of in-ring performing or the actual sport, whatever it was you're doing. He had that next level that just made him that whole package. And I think that's the thing when you get wrestlers who were amazing in the ring, but if they can't do promos very well, then that can let them down.
Definitely,
absolutely. There's a lot of examples. You can see guys who are just phenomenal workers, but the promo side of things really cuts their career shorter than it needs to be. And you can see some guys come out for a debut match and they'll just be amazing. You think this guy's got money written all over him. Then as soon as he's got a mic in his hand, it's just bomb and no one's interested. And you can't carry a story in just your in-ring action. Some people can. If you're more of a luchador, they don't do a hell of a lot of talking.
No.
But I think for what we focus on, what we specialise in, American, UK style wrestling, if you can't talk, then you do become surplus to requirements after a while.
Definitely, it's an art form, absolutely. you know, some people have got it, some people haven't. It's a gift, really. There's only a select few, I would say, that are, you know, kind of upper echelon mic talkers. Everybody can do it, and everybody has to do it, and you know, they get by.
Everyone.
A lot of it is written now, especially in like WWE. The writers of them shows will, you know, kind of pretty much say, like, write down everything that people need to say.
Yeah.
Back in the days of Austin and things like that, it was probably just, here are a few points you need to hit and talk.
And you'll see that now, like the guys who are given that liberty, who come in now, like the older guys. If you see Austin, if you see Shawn Michaels, like they're head and shoulders above what the talent are allowed to do now because they are given that creative license, and that's something that's really missing from the main product, is that it's too over scripted.
Yeah.
And you hit those same points over again. The scratch and claw, the in this ring tonight, like you know, they just hit those same points over and over again. Whereas people are allowed to be a bit more creative. Promos are better when they've got a few flubs and mistakes in them as well, because it shows you're talking from your heart.
Yeah. I know, Rob, you've got a few kind of like written down that are some iconic promos over time.
Yeah, we've got quite a few. We were listening to a few earlier, actually, just before we started. Some of them that were the really sort of off-script ones, or, you know, claim to be really sort of these off-script shoot promos, like the Bret Hart one where he just snaps, and that it had come at a time where he really was sort of, you know, sick of being that what he considered the sport is all about, and what he should be, and all these other people who were just coming in and, you know, not behaving properly and not doing what he considered an actual top professional wrestler should be doing, and that all comes across in the way he just sort of snaps and, you know, doesn't hold back at all, which is something you never really saw from Bret Hart, especially at that time.
Like cool, calm, and collected, wasn't he, a lot of the time? So it was
very professional, and that's what he used to pride himself on. You know, if you ever see the Wrestling with Shadows documentary, he's upset almost at the way that the company he's working for is going in a direction that he doesn't agree with, because it's not about the in-ring
controversy,
and it's about controversy, and it's not about the in-ring ability anymore. It's about the, you know, how I can be outrageous and say something or do something. And at the time of sort of the Attitude Era of WWE, he was really not against it, but you could tell he was uncomfortable with it.
Whoa! Frustrated isn't the goddamn word for it! This is bullshit!
Oh, we apologize, ladies and
Screw
gentlemen.
me! Everybody screws me! And nobody does a goddamn thing about it!
All comes out in this,
he does.
in this promo.
And it's a clever way of him using that gimmick of being outrageous and crazy to put himself over. But you wouldn't, if you were listening to that at the time, you would have just thought he was genuinely upset and angry, which he kind of was. But he used it as like, this is what I hate, but doing the exact same thing that you're practicing, like, kind of, you know, he was being his own worst enemy at that time.
There's always
and it worked perfectly for him.
Yeah, there's always a level of, like, you know, if he was really that furious, he just would have got out of the ring and gone assaulted someone or whatever. And there's always that level of, if you're a professional wrestler, you're a performer at heart. And, you know, Bret's not really known for his promos, yet he has some of the best in history, because when he did cut them, they were from the heart and they were raw. And that's really kind of an agreement, I suppose, amongst most wrestling fans, is that you can be a guy who's not necessarily... Look at Goldberg. Goldberg's recent run, he was the best promo in the company, which is insane to think, because back in the day, he never even spoke, let alone cut promos.
But it is the older guys, though, isn't it? I mean, like, I think we're at a time now in WWE where there's not really that many that... But so the best person who does promos at the minute is Paul Heyman, and he's not a wrestler. You know, he's a promoter, and he's used to work with Brock to be this mouthpiece for Brock, to keep Brock Lesnar looking as strong as he can, and not have to worry about the talking, because he's got this hype man almost that does it all for him. I can't really think of any at the minute that are just so outstanding of the new style. You know, Triple H still does a good promo,
Samoa
because
Joe,
that's what he does. Samoa Joe's probably the only one, but I don't think there's been that many since. Probably like Enzo Amore's promos were really good, because they were really just, you know, what he wanted to say, and very, very little scripted for him. Just here's some points, like you said, Ethan. Here's some points. Go out and make these points.
Yeah, I guess the last true guy that we had doing that was CM Punk. His obviously notorious pipe bomb promo that he cut on. You know, his, again, it relates back to Bret. The best promos always come from the true feelings at heart, just spun in a different way to make it like applicable for TV. He kind of came out on stage, sat down, and just went in on his grievances with wrestling and WWE and Vince McMahon. And it was, again, like, and Punk said, and again, you take what Punk says with a pinch of salt outside of wrestling, because I don't know how much I trust him, but he said he was getting, stuff written for him by the guys. They would bring it to him with a piece of paper, and he would just take it and rip it in front of their faces and give it back to the writers, as if to say, whatever you're giving me isn't good enough, isn't going to be better than what I could just say off the top of my head.
On the documentary that's on the network actually about CM Punk, and there's a line where he sort of says, they just, before this sort of pipe bomb promo, they just came up to me and just said, just say what you want. You just go out and say what you did, say what you want, and that's what he did. And he always used to sort of think, right now, what are you going to say now? Like you said, there's nothing that you're going to write that's going to make me deliver it in the way that I can and say what I can. And this one, he just said what he felt.
Me in the world that I am the best on this microphone, in that ring, even at commentary. Nobody can touch me. And yet, no matter how many times I prove it, I'm not on your lovely little collector cups. I'm not on the cover of the program. I'm barely promoted. I don't get to be in movies. I'm certainly not on any crappy show on the USA Network. I'm not on the poster of WrestleMania. I'm not in the signature that's produced at the start of the show. I'm not on Conan O'Brien, I'm not on Jimmy Fallon, but the fact of the matter is I should be, and trust me, this isn't sour grapes, but the fact that Dwayne is in the main event of WrestleMania next year and I'm not makes me sick.
It's a shame his UFC career fell flat, because if he managed to be really good at it, we could have got some hell of it, like Conor McGregor times 10. Because when Punk was on, like his old Ring of Honor stuff where he'd like cut promos on the crowd in front of like 5 or 6 people, and like he'd just switch it on, and he was so smart and like 10 steps ahead of the audience, and it's like he could make them hate him, he could make them love him, and I think he is in the conversation of like some of the greatest talkers of all time.
Definitely.
And he's one of those where you look at the pipe bomb promo and you look at how when someone gets to go off and speak their mind, it's really important, but you can also see why WWE don't let them do that all the time, because when they do, it's special and it's memorable, but at the same time, you don't want to see them getting micromanaged to the point where they are now, where you're just getting these same sterile promos with catchphrases, and it's just it just doesn't work anymore.
When was the Punk pipe bomb now?
Was it
2011,
2012?
I mean, I don't know if it's like 2013. I don't know.
I don't know. It's
a long time ago.
Thinking back now, it's like that we've gone on a dry run of not very many people who can have the ability to just say what they want to say in a good way.
I suppose since then we had the Miz one on the Talking Smack episode with Daniel Bryan, which was a similar kind of thing where that look, whether it was written or not, it came across really like they're going to just start fighting on this TV show, because one of them's legitimately at that time Daniel Bryan wanted to wrestle but couldn't, and he references that in the point where the Miz is, telling him, if you were such a good, person, you would do it and you would wrestle. And then he says, I want to, but they won't let me. And that was not something that he'd ever really acknowledged before. We all knew that he'd had this, concussion issue, and they couldn't clear him, or they wouldn't clear him, or other doctors would. And that was almost him voicing that frustration, Daniel Bryan, where he's like, I want to, they won't let me.
Yeah, it was clever. I don't know if I've not watched the Miz promo in a while. Does he talk about how he wrestles like safe or something like that?
He does mention about how he's
I think he puts in. Yeah, he says in there. I've wrestled in the career I've had, I've never injured anybody or been injured. I'm here night in, night out.
I mean, it's his way of kind of saying, you, Daniel Bryan, you wrestle like an idiot, which he does still to this day. He does. I think we said it in one of the earlier podcasts. He does like the flying headbutt, which
super dangerous.
Arguably kills a man in his family.
Anybody who's ever used that move is in a really bad way now.
And it's a clever way of him saying, I've almost like a dig at wrestling fans, because he was getting a lot of slack, or not slack, a lot of shit at that time for being a boring wrestler and things like that. But for the length of his career, I mean, he got rocked by Kofi Kingston at one time, didn't he? With that Trouble in Paradise that pretty much knocked him out. Kofi Kingston hit a Trouble in Paradise on him that was just clean flush in the face, and I think it gave him a concussion, maybe. Yeah. But again, that's
never in my career ever have been injured. I don't get injured for 6 months to a year. I am here each and every week. But you sit there and call me a coward? Yeah. I'm the coward. Wait, let me tell you about a coward. Let me tell you about a guy who tells his WWE fans, the people that he loves, he'll be back He promises them, I promise you, I will be back in 1 year's time to claim this title. But you didn't, Daniel, did you? But I'm the coward. I'm the one that doesn't love the fans.
If they would let me come back, I would come back.
Oh, if you would?
Yeah.
You would. You love that WWE ring. You love wrestling. You love being right in that wrestling ring, and you love wrestling, right? Well, why don't you quit? Why don't you quit and go to the bingo halls with your indie friends?
Okay, I think you need to calm. That's not what this show's about.
The GM have this. Thank you very much, Renee. This is a great show.
No. But yeah, that was a great promo, and again, a lot of anger in that. And a lot of the promos in the older days were just, screaming at a camera at the top of the voice, like popping blood vessels. And
that's what a lot of like the listeners to the show will probably recognise as wrestling
thinking back
promos
to
if they
it,
don't really into wrestling. Hogan, Warrior, Savage.
Thinking back to Ultimate Warrior, just screaming down a mark.
Oh, they were good.
I think that's the first person you think of if you talk to someone who has just a passing fancy in wrestling, and you talk about promos, and you said to someone like, if you were a wrestler, what would you do? The first thing they would start doing, they would just start shouting, and,
like the Warrior, or
like
Hogan,
Warrior would, or Warrior would, and they would start shouting, and then you get someone like Jay Roberts comes along with some of his promos that talks in a really quietly. He draws you in because you're not put off by this big person shouting. You're literally getting closer to the screen so you can hear him.
To hear what he's saying. Yeah, it's clever, and as I said, there's numerous different ways to deliver a promo, and that's what's so magical about it, is that it's not a kind of copy and paste for every single person.
No,
you can deliver them in so many different ways that work, beautifully. Because a lot of the guys, like obviously, Macho Man wouldn't shout so much. He would get angry and then kind of calm it back down again, and it was perfect how he did it. But then past those guys, when they finished and when they left, the next guys tried to emulate those guys and just were screaming nonsense down a camera, and it kind of you didn't really listen to it or take much notice, 'cause it's just almost white noise at that point.
I think we spoke before about Randy Savage's cream of the crop promo, where he
Brilliant.
would get to the point where people would just, the guys in the locker room would just give him something, a prop, and just say, get this in, turn this into a promo, take this prop with you.
Yeah, they gave him a little cup of, I guess we just call it little packets of milk, but I guess it's
he just keeps
cream.
bringing them out as well.
He just keeps random,
like a magic trick almost.
The amount of substance abuse at the time, I think we've all known someone who just has the ability to capture an entire room when they're absolutely off their heads, and they just can hold someone in their hands. And I think when you get
fully cheesed up
so
off
many,
his nut,
you get so many of these big mental people in one room, and they're all off their heads.
It's bound to go wrong.
Some of them are just magical.
That's when your moments of glory do. And your moments of glory, that's when they do come from. Is that's perfect times for wrestlers. But then that kind of died away for a little while, and obviously the attitude era came, kind of led in by Stone Cold
and The Rock.
And The Rock.
The promo
I mean, the promos like Stone Cold's King of the Ring promo,
absolutely
led in the era of Austin and Rock.
Stone
Cold.
And that promo from King of the Ring that Austin did was, probably 90 seconds long,
if that,
in total.
So important,
and it was perfect. If we look at the CM Punk one, it's a slightly different thing because it's something that he's getting off his chest, and it's almost unscripted for him.
Austin's
it's 4 or 5, it's about 5-6 minutes long, the Punk one, and
the Punk one was, but
it would have been longer if it wouldn't have been, if he wouldn't have had his microphone cut off.
The Austin one kind of ushers out the old era of the older wrestler, like he beats Jake the Snake, and he says, get that piece of crap out of my ring, and then that kind of moved on the older generation of wrestlers and brought in these new guys.
Absolutely, and
very, very pivotal for the wrestling.
First thing I want to be done is to get that piece of crap out of my ring. Don't just get him out of the ring, get him out of the WWF. Because I've proved, son, without a shadow of a doubt, you ain't got what it takes anymore. You sit there and you thump your Bible and you say your prayers, and it didn't get you anywhere. Talk about your Psalms, talk about John 3:16. Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass.
Jake's position in the history of wrestling, the promo, he's probably one of the most important transitional characters ever, because he brought in the fade away of the old shouty, burly, angry, cartoony ways, because he was intelligent, he was smart, his promos would always carry weight with them, and then from there to be the guy on the receiving end of the Austin 3:16 promo where things turned into shoot not shoot, it was a different form of aggression, it was a more believable anger. He's just so pivotal, and he doesn't get the credit he deserves a lot of the time.
So what the line was, talk about your Psalms, talk about John 3:16, Austin 3:16 said I just whooped your ass. That's probably one of the first times that it sounds stupid now in this day and age to say ass, but I guess back then you wouldn't really say many words like that.
And stuff like that.
Yeah,
When
it
it
was
was home,
very,
he'd be like,
kind
"I'm
of
gonna kick your butt,
kid-friendly.
dude."
Yeah, and I guess that's really one of the first times that those words started to get used. It was like at that moment, whoa, this is.
It made it feel a bit real, didn't it? Really, I think,
Definitely.
and that was it. That
Really did.
that entered that era of everyone thinking this is, real people. Regardless of what people thought about, the actual result, or everyone knows it's planned out or whatever. But
What? You're joking.
You've rattled me, mate.
Yeah, no, it's
rattled me.
Yeah, no, it was very like kind of real, as Rob was saying, because I remember the days of, and again, it's not that long ago in the grand scheme of things, but probably like maybe like 08, 07 promos on Raw. I used to watch them obviously the day after on Sky Sports, and they would the wrestlers would just get to say what they wanted to say, and they would say swear words, and the audio would just kind of cut out for like a second, and they still do it now. If the mics accidentally pick up somebody saying a swear word, they'll mute the mics.
Yeah, the ring mic.
Sean kind of brought a lot of that.
The ring mic picks it up.
The ring mic picks it up sometimes, but I used to remember watching them, and like they'd say something, and I'd be able to see the lips moving, but the audio would go mute, and I'd be like, what did they say? And it's like, it kind of gets you interested and intrigued into, are they swearing like on TV? And it's, as a kid, you're like, this is amazing, like, I love it.
I think that's the sort of different, spectrum of it all. Like, you say, as a kid, it's amazing. As someone who was, 18, 19, thinking, yeah, this is what I want to watch. This is exactly that whole kind of era of like
against anti-authority.
Yeah.
Totally.
You used to get the videos over here, like, even though they were like PG-14 in America, they were like 18, a lot of them, like Hell in a Cell.
Yeah.
And so they could get away with the kind of more scandalous stuff, and like D-Generation X, those guys, you'd always find that they could push the boundaries more, and that helped you believe what was happening in the ring. It's this classic thing that JR would always say, that like, if point A and point B are true, point C is more likely to be true.
Absolutely.
So it leads you down that. So when you see these guys acting like proper hard men, that makes you kind of buy into it a little bit more as to what they're doing might be a bit more legit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting to look back at kind of that stuff, and it is a gift, as I was saying, and it's very, very tough to do.
I can't think of anything more nerve-wracking than
in front of a live audience,
doing that and going out and someone giving you a microphone and
make it up.
You just make it up. Right, here's some points to remember. This is who you're having a match against. This is when it is. This is the date. Go.
Yeah. So
I won't know what to say.
No, I was going to say it, and I said it last time, but it's on the iPlayer right now. All of Louis Theroux's documentaries that he's ever done. Yeah. He did one on WCW, on wrestling, but through WCW, and he went to the power plant, which is where they did all their training and development back in the day for those guys, and they have a promo class, and it's kind of, it's funny, but in like a cringy way to watch. I mean, I feel bad for them, because the guy that's leading the class is like, right, you've got, like, back in the day when it was, stand, like, they don't look at the camera anymore because it's a reality TV show nowadays. They pretend the cameras don't exist, but back in the day it was look at the camera, talk to the camera as if you're talking to the audience, get your point across. So the guy says, this is who you're fighting, this is when it's going to be, this is where it's going to be. You've got 45 seconds, go. And you'd think that'd be pretty easy, but you'd notice in the first 10 seconds they'd kind of blow the loads and they'd have nothing left to say, and they've got all the points out straight away because they're so amped up and like kind of fighting and shouting, and then they'd say the 3 points and then they'd have nothing else, and they'd just say the 3 points again and then again, and it's just, you realise at that moment that this is really, really hard to do. And I was even saying, like, Louis Theroux, who speaks for a living, like that's his job, he has a go at it, and he struggles like quite badly to kind of keep it going. And I mean, he is a very soft-spoken man from London.
It is tricky though. Like,
it's tough. It's really, really tough.
You get the people who are just, they want it all scripted, and you get the ones who are just, here's the points and go out and make it. I remember watching, I think it might have been Stone Cold's podcast. They had Dean Ambrose on, and Dean Ambrose is really good at, just give me the main points and I'll go out and do something. And his promos are great. The first time that the Shield sort of imploded when Seth turned on them and he cut a promo with Roman in the ring, and it was just unbelievable, about I'm going to do this to you, I'm going to break your nose, I'm going to tear your ear off, and all this kind of stuff, and he was really good at it.
He really made his own star when he was John Moxley in the kind of like parking lot interview style of promos, and it'd just be him off his head just saying whatever he felt, because with a good promo you really have to embody your character and understand you are your character.
Definitely.
And you agree with the things your character thinks. So it's like, if you are in that ring, like, I imagine that if you were put on the spot and someone was having a go at you and really treating you unfairly, you could think of 100 things you want to say to that person. So these people put themselves, into their character, and they believe in everything that's coming out of their mouth.
Totally.
And that's a great wrestler right there.
And I think it's very important to remember that wrestling isn't just two guys inside a 5 by, well, what is it now, 15 by 15 or
20 by 20, 20 by 20.
Talking, like wrestling, it isn't just that, it's everything around that as well, like the backstage kind of, promos and interviews and angles and stuff like that, and it is a kind of a soap opera really, but the promo side of it is really, really, really vital for wrestling. It wouldn't survive nowadays if it didn't exist, and I think if you are interested in getting into wrestling, start with promos, because it gets you excited and involved, and you look back at boxing or UFC kind of press conferences. Like Conor McGregor is a perfect example of a man that definitely grew up watching Ric Flair and other 100%. Wrestlers talking. Same with boxing, like you hear Tyson Fury going crazy at people. I can guarantee you he probably watched wrestling at some point in his life, and that's
it's interesting. I've had this conversation recently, like with the Conor McGregor and Khabib match, and how crazy it all was. And friends of mine in sort of like a WhatsApp group, they're all like boxing purists, and they absolutely love boxing, hate UFC. They hated the McGregor Mayweather match and all that kind of thing. And I was saying something like, but boxing is WWE, UFC is WWE. Yeah, this is where it's all come from, and
it's just more real.
It's just the thing with WWE is we all know that it's a show.
It's not actually real,
and it's a show, and it's for our entertainment.
It was really funny at the time of the Conor Khabib, after the Conor Khabib match had finished. Somebody tweeted, if this was WWE, the entire throwing the dolly at the boss and like smashing the glass and shouting and fighting each other and running backstage, that would have just been a normal week on Raw. Like that happens literally all the time.
Definitely.
It happens every single week, and people loved it. This is the thing. So like UFC, absolutely, like the UFC fans, the ultras of it, absolutely loved it, because they probably don't watch wrestling and don't get to see that very often. Whereas if you're a wrestling fan, you literally see it all the time.
It's part of it, yeah.
You've got to be delusional if you don't think that combat sports and the rivalries built within it, if you think they're real, all of them, you're not right. Because none of them are. No. You look at when Chisora and Hay had that fight, and they were like, "Oh, a glass got thrown in a nightclub and stuff." It's like, bullshit. Yeah. Two professional athletes who probably train really close to each other, and at the end of the fight, they're always like, "Oh, good fight, mate.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's the point. And even with that whole, I remember the Lennox Lewis Mike Tyson fight where they had a row of security guards in the ring between them, and at the end of the fight, everyone hugs and
they've done it in UFC before as well with Conor, I think, against somebody, I can't remember who it was. They lined up all the security guards between the octagon, and it does give it that big fight feel, and it puts a lot of hype on the match.
It's the promotion. That's exactly what it is. It's the
promo. Like if you look back at, so you were saying about the Chisora Hay fight, there is a video online, and again, it's all suspiciously handheld footage. It's not even that; it's just like handheld footage of I think it's Chisora talking, and then Hay runs into the room, starts shouting things from across the room at him, and then Chisora gets up and jumps into the crowd. They pretty much don't really get near each other. Hay gets pulled away, and then he runs away.
Someone, you fight him.
Exactly, like, and I could probably guarantee you, them two guys met up after that and were like, "That was wicked, that was brilliant." That got us a lot of sales, that got us a lot of buys. And it all comes from.
It's all business. It's all It's the same with footballers. They're all media trained. You don't get that footballer anymore. That's like Gascoigne, who does an interview afterwards and says something absolutely crazy. Everyone's media trained.
FIFA,
and it's the same with that.
The IBF, fucking UFC, every single one of these governing bodies aren't there to find out who the best player is or who the best fighter is. They're there to make money.
Exactly.
They do not care who the best at something is.
You don't make money off silent guys. It's like, you look at like anybody on adverts, for football or other sports, like Ronaldo is massive outside the game because of his personality and the way he looks and the way he presents himself. Fucking imagine Paul Scholes is probably one of the greatest players, to ever lace a pair of boots,
of his generation.
Of his generation. But he was just a quiet young lad with ginger hair that didn't really ever say much, didn't have much to say, but was one of the most prolific football players of all time. He probably made no money for FIFA or anybody other like advertising bodies because he was just a kind of boring person. And that's nothing against him, but it's with like Tom says, with any sport, if you don't have a kind of guy that talks and makes controversy, then you don't really need to be.
Yeah,
involved.
that's the age that we're in. That every professional sportsman or product has to have a USP.
Absolutely.
Everyone has to have that unique selling point of what's going to make you stand out over this person, because you are as good as this person in the ring or on the pitch or in the court or whatever it is. But what makes you better than the person that you're going up against? It's going to make people buy into you more.
Who's going to buy your shirts?
And that's why Conor has as many fights as he has.
Yeah.
I think people. I'm not a big Conor fan, and I get a lot of shtick for it. I don't think he is as good as people make out for him to be.
Yeah.
But it all comes from the way that he talks, and the reason he's been in so many main events, and the reason he's probably sold the most pay-per-views ever, is because he hypes the match beforehand.
He can.
And there's not a lot of guys that do that.
Though. He's seen that crossover to WWE where he's taken things from there. That little ring walk he does was him saying, it's my little Vince McMahon walk and all that kind of thing. And it all comes from it.
He came in before the Nate Diaz match, and he says he came in, he turned up late, which again I don't know if I believe that he was actually late. I think he just rocked up to the actual press conference late, and he said like some kind of rhyme about wearing Gucci mink, something else, without me this whole fucking ship sinks or something like that. Like if you look back at Ric Flair, he was a styling, profiling, limousine riding, jet flying, high flying son of a gun. Fur jackets, all rhyming slang, all kind of like little token catchphrases. That is Ric Flair / Dusty Rhodes personified in a new guy.
I think people who look at the fight game, and fighters especially, who would be like, "Oh, I'm not about this hype thing. I'm just here for fighting." It's like, well, you're not very smart, lad. Because
no, you're not.
You're going to end up with
yourself.
concussions. You're going to end up with problems. You're going to struggle in later life if you just tie your wagon to, I'm going to fight until I'm 50.
Yeah.
All right, cool. See how it worked out for Ali. See how it worked out for Sonny Liston or any of those guys. See how it worked out for any of the guys who just were fighters.
Yeah.
It's not going to work for you. You've got to be like, I need to be a celebrity. I need to be a character. Get out of this crap. Get into the movie.
That's what always made me laugh about the Rocky films.
Yeah.
Is that Rocky Balboa just doesn't know how to talk at all, and it's his character, and it's hilarious and like even kind of cute at the same time almost. But I was watching Rocky 2 the other night, and they've just had the first fight, and it's kind of awful fight, both seriously injured. And there's a massive build up to getting back into ring shape and getting into the ring, and it's Rocky training and getting grizzled, and then they get into the ring and they square up, and Apollo goes, "You're going down," and he slams his gloves, and Rocky just kind of like smiles and goes, "Yeah, okay," just kind of like laughs at him a little bit, and it's like a really innocent kind of face, but. If that was real, he would sell no pay-per-views at all because he just kind of he just smiles. What does he say about? It's one of the press conferences, and obviously he's an idiot, so he doesn't understand what the question is. But he says something that's like really kind of sweet and kind about Apollo Creed, and it's like you would never do that in real life. You would never be like, Conor McGregor's a really good fighter. He's a really nice guy as well outside the octagon. I'm really looking forward to fighting him. You don't get any money by doing that at all. And like again, Nate Diaz, perfect example, walked into the McGregor press conference a couple of years ago now, was it? And started throwing cans at him and stuff like that, and then Conor was throwing him back.
It's all a big show.
It's a massive show.
You look at those guys; they train together, they come up together, and Conor is very much like it's just business. All the crap that came with Khabib, like cultural barriers and stuff, and I think they took it too far to a point where the other guy wasn't in on it, and this is what happened. Jim Cornette always says about how
it's all
being in the fight, being in the fight game's tough anyway because you can't predict it. It's like Brawl for All when WWE did that stupid shoot fighting tournament, and it just ended up being a nightmare. All the stars they wanted to get over got their heads kicked in, and it was just a complete waste. And I think if you don't have everyone in and everyone involved at the core of it, it's going to go off the rails.
Well. And I think it's interesting from a wrestling fan's point of view, like ourselves. It all does seem very, very fishy when it all happens. Like when Conor threw the dolly at the bus and cracked the window. Within 5 minutes, Dana White was on Facebook Live, and he's like, Conor's going to get suspended. He's not going to be able to. I'm going to strip the belts off him. I'm going to do this and that. I don't know if he'll be allowed to fight in New York. And it's like. Within 5 minutes of that happening, are you really worried about getting on Facebook Live and talking to the world?
It's all promotion. It's all getting as many people to watch your product as possible.
And that's literally, I think you just summed it up in a sentence there, Rob. Is that it is all promotion. It's all promos. It's all promos. Every sport is. It always has. Well, not always has been, but since the 80s, always has been and always will be. And that's probably why we love wrestling so much.
There's so many. I mean, I'm just sort of thinking about it now. There's so many. In the UK scene, Trent Seven's promos are great. because he's just this big funny lad almost, and Zach Gibson. The first
probably the best guy on a mic right now. I would say
the first
not in the world, not
Progress,
even just England. In the
first
world,
Progress match I went to was last year with you guys, and you sort of said, when this guy comes out, watch his promo because he can't get a word in, and it was the best promo of the night, and he didn't say anything because as soon as he raises that microphone to his mouth, that's it.
Booze.
Last year, Roman Reigns looked into that by the Undertaker match at WrestleMania, where they started shouting "fuck you, Roman," boo it, and he looked into that. Whereas with someone like Zach Gibson,
he's built that,
and
it all comes from his mouth.
With Roman's one with Undertaker, it's in a WWE match from a WWE match in a WWE Raw after Mania, which is crazy and all that kind of thing. Whereas that transfers from Zach Gibson from Progress to WWE. Yeah, I know they're tied in a little bit. They do have tied in, and
he goes to all these promotions that he wrestles for.
But how great is that every place you go to,
you're going to get that
reaction. That's the reaction you're going to get.
And is it Cena that says any reaction is a good reaction? And if it's true,
you'd have to say that at this point, wouldn't you?
You kind of would, yeah. But no, he's right in what he says.
Gibson's you look at it and you do think, because when you break it down, you think oh yeah, everyone just boos him. But the way he structures his promos with the soon it'll ride through the booze, so he's not trying to say stuff like will get drowned out. The way he can shout it, you can still hear him. Yeah. But the boos are there, and it's he's constructed this perfect way of delivering
Apart from the first night of the WWE tournament, I genuinely couldn't hear a word he was saying, and even screaming the soons. And he turns to the stage and he's like, "Turn this microphone up," and he's screaming through it. And
but that all works as well. That's even if he generally can't hear himself.
And I was really happy. I was absolutely buzzing for him at that point because I was very, very worried that he was going to get the mic. I was almost guaranteed he was being the final. I knew he was going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And I was buzzing for the fact that he got the reaction that he got. I was very worried that it might be a lot of mums and dads that had brought the kids along to a wrestling show in London. It was actual fans that knew of him and knew where he used to wrestle. And I'm just glad that Triple H, Johnny Saint, HBK were all stood backstage that got to witness that
some of the best
deafening blues.
Some of the best in the business from all sides of the globe.
Because I worried that maybe if it had got to the final and kind of got mediocre reactions and not a lot of
he would have lost his
he might have lost either his push or his momentum. I'm just glad that they got to see that he's one of the most hated humans in wrestling.
Has he ever worked Japan?
I don't know.
Because I know they don't really boo that much. It'd be interesting to see what would happen.
That's just that culture altogether. I've seen.
They're very respectful, aren't they, of the wrestlers?
Yeah, I mean, even
it'd be great if they just tore him to pieces like everyone else does. He managed to turn the Japanese crowd into
He's been to China, but not Japan.
Yeah.
Even music gigs in Japan, they do that. There's no talking or singing or chanting in between.
Aussie in between songs really weird to watch because Aussie's come on, get up, and they're all just
I've seen
wait for the song to finish. Then
sort of two complete opposites of an Oasis gig in River Plate Stadium in Argentina, where the crowd are just unbelievable, chanting everything in between each song, chanting the music parts of the song, not the lyrics, and then you transfer that to a gig in Japan where it's just silent, and then the song finishes and they applaud and they cheer, and then that's it.
Yeah, really weird, really interesting. It's changing a little bit now, I think. There's a few bands like K-pop stuff that gets good reactions, but no, it's really, really cool to see. Literally, when you think of it, in the essence, when you strip it all down, it's a person with a microphone in their hand, just talking. And it's kind of crazy to think that can sell you something to the point where you think, I'm going to go out and buy this pay-per-view, or I'm going to sit down, I'm going to stay up until 3 a.m. and watch this because whatever you've just said has made me kind of invested fully into it. But we're going to probably wrap this one up now. Thank you very much for listening. I guess we may on Twitter at Staring at the Lights, we might throw a little list out of some promos that are kind of good if you wanted to listen to a few good ones. But as I was saying, catch us at Staring at the Lights on Twitter, Staring at the Lights on Instagram, the Lights Pod on Twitter. Sorry, that's the one. My bad. I'm awful at selling these things.
I'll delete it if you don't get it right.
Brilliant. Don't delete this one.
I think this one was better than the last one, to be fair.
Yeah,
it might be. If Rob deletes it, I'm going to retire from this podcast. I won't be here next week when you come back. But thank you very much for listening. We'll catch you soon. Goodbye.